The original Tribal Chief returned at SummerSlam and finally gave us the babyface reigns that Vince McMahon spent 7 years forcing down our throats. But now, we've accepted Reigns as our new babyface overload. What's next for the OG leader of the bloodline? 4 years as the biggest heel in the business, a history-making title reign, and an epic WrestleMania loss. It was hard to imagine a WWE without Reigns involved somehow. A lot has changed in the time he's been gone, so that leaves one question. What's next for this new, even more pissed off version of Roman Reigns? In this video, we're breaking down the potential paths for Roman Reigns going forward, from unlikely alliances to the biggest marquee matches possible. With the most stacked roster since 1999, there's no shortage of options for the OG Tribal Chief. But before we get into this topic, please take a minute to hit the like button. If you love deep dives into storylines and wrestlers' careers, please acknowledge us by subscribing to our channel. Now, let's get into it. First, let's rewind the clock back to WrestleMania 40. Reigns finally lost his title to Cody Rhodes in what can only be described as the most overbooked main event of all time. We saw run-ins from The Rock, John Cena, Undertaker, and Seth Rollins before Rhodes delivered the killing blow to put an end to a 1,316-day title reign. It was the perfect ending for such a historic run. While Roman was off licking his wounds, the bloodline didn't exactly sit idle. Solo Sikoa decided to full succession and stage a hostile takeover. He kicked out every member of the old guard, then brought in his own muscle. Tama Tonga, Tongaloa, Jacob Fatu, and apparently Hikuleo. Another Samoan wrestler from New Japan is on his way too. The bloodline had dominated SmackDown ever since and elevated themselves to the biggest heel in the biz. Fast forward to SummerSlam 2024, Cody is getting beat down by the bloodline in the main event versus Solo Sikoa. And boom, Roman's music hits. The crowd loses it. We're talking organic, unforced, honest-to-God cheers. The kind of natural reaction Vince McMahon spent nearly a decade trying to engineer for Roman. And now the crowds are doing it without prompt. It's proof of the old saying, the hotter the heel, the hotter the babyface. As we saw at SummerSlam and recently on SmackDown, it seems like Roman and Cody are now on the same page. So here's where things get interesting. Roman and Cody are the two biggest stars on SmackDown. Now they're aligned and both on SmackDown. It's like having two suns in one solar system. Awesome, but potentially problematic. Cody's already run through the bloodline multiple times, including Solo Sikoa. And sure, Roman's got his own score to settle, but right now the bloodline looks as threatening as a wet paper bag. If it wasn't for Jacob Fatu being the wild card, Roman and Cody's alliance would feel like two superheroes chasing down overdue library books. That's where our first problem arises. Too many good guys. Not enough bad guys, at least on SmackDown. So WWE has two options. Either split Cody and Roman up by sending one to Raw, or start building up some serious heels on SmackDown. Until that happens, WWE will struggle to create any suspense for matches. In fact, the lack of heels on SmackDown is so bad that Cody's next challenger for his title is another babyface. Roman vs. Solo is the big match we're all expecting, and it's the next logical step in the Bloodline saga. Roman will most likely tear through the Tongans before getting his hands on Solo. And since they've already planted the seed for it, we'll probably see it sooner rather than later. Most likely at Bash in Berlin or Bad Blood, with a rematch at Crown Jewel. But, as we mentioned, Solo isn't exactly the number one bad guy anymore. His aura's depleted quite badly, and if we're being honest, he didn't really compare to Reigns in the first place. So this match isn't really the most exciting prospect, even though it's a necessary bridge for Roman to cross before he can move on to cleaner pastures. Just don't expect a clean finish, because chances are WWE will drag this one out for a while. Now we're talking. If there's one match that's going to make us sit up and take notice, it's this one. WWE has done a masterful job of protecting Jacob Fatu so far, and on a recent episode of SmackDown, him and Roman interacted for the first time. After Reigns took out Solo Sikoa, Fatu made his presence felt in a big way. He jumped Roman Reigns and completely decimated him. And the show ended with a Samoan werewolf standing tall over the former champ. As far as beatdown goes, it doesn't get much more explosive than this. Fatu looked every bit the unstoppable force WWE has been painting him as, and this interaction confirms that a one-on-one match is inevitably in the future. We've yet to see Jacob Fatu step in the ring alone with anyone, and a match where Roman has the potential to elevate him from crazy enforcer to main event player. When will it happen? Well, Triple H is a master of the slow burn, so it'll probably take a while, but it won't stop us salivating over the idea of it happening eventually. Something else we know about Triple H, he has a real Wargames fetish. He was the mastermind behind bringing it back in NXT, and it's since become a staple of Survivor Series. This year will be no different, and since Triple H always goes all out for Wargames, we can expect the Bloodline saga to play out in the double cage. So we're probably looking at the new Bloodline versus OG Bloodline. We already know who's on Solo's team, but who's Roman going to recruit? Sure, he might be friendly with Cody now, but before he disappeared, he made enemies out of everyone. So his first option would be to recruit friends of friends, aka Kevin Owens and Randy Orton. But we've seen incarnations of Cody, Owens, Orton versus the Bloodline 100 times already. Plus, there's still some time between now and Survivor Series, and even WWE would struggle to drag this feud out until then. However, there's another intriguing possibility on the horizon. The Usos haven't been doing much recently, and Sami Zayn has just been speared right out of the Intercontinental title scene by Braun Breaker. That means the other three Bloodline originals are free to help Reigns should he need comrades for Wargames. This would involve Roman mending fences with these former allies, and if this scenario plays out, it would require some significant character evolution for Roman. He'd need to swallow his pride and admit that he does need help, something he could never do during his heel run. This humbling process could be the cornerstone of Roman's babyface redemption arc, thus showing fans a vulnerable and more relatable side of the tribal chief. There's only one person who can solve this bloodline quagmire, and that's the mastermind behind this whole storyline, Paul Heyman. The last time we saw him, he was being put through a table for refusing to acknowledge Solo as the new tribal chief, thus turning the most despised manager of the modern age into an instant babyface. In reality, Heyman has probably been writing the whole bloodline saga behind the scenes, but when he makes his on-screen return, he's going to get the kind of pops not seen since he was running ECW. In fact, Heyman's got as much right to be pissed off at the bloodline as Roman has. So there's every chance we can see Team Paul Heyman versus the new bloodline at Survivor Series. Everyone comes back to WWE eventually. There once was a time when we thought we'd never see CM Punk, Arn Anderson, or Jesse Ventura on WWE TV ever again. But we've seen all three of them in the past 2 weeks alone. Plus, if WWE fans are willing to forgive Hulk Hogan, Logan Paul, and Jerry Lawler for their criminal past, they're definitely going to go wild when Brock Lesnar's music finally hits again. We haven't seen Lesnar since he became entangled in Vince McMahon's lawsuit earlier this year, but his name hasn't been far off people's lips recently. Triple H talked about him at a press conference, and there have been pictures of him out and about looking in great shape. So if Roman needs backup for Wargames and WWE wants to avoid another Owens-Orton multi-match, then Lesnar makes for the perfect companion. After all, Lesnar is the ultimate Paul Heyman guy, and they can explain it by saying that Paul called in a favor from an old friend. If WWE really wanted to go all out, they could even slot CM Punk into the mix if they wanted a full Heyman team. We can't have a WrestleMania without Roman Reigns. He's headlined a record-breaking 8 Manias, including the last 4 in a row. There's a 100% chance he'll headline at least one night next year too. But who's he going to face? They could drag out the Reigns versus Solo feud, but 7 months of family drama might be pushing it, even for WWE. We could see Roman versus Cody Part 3, maybe with both of them as faces, but let's be real, we're all thinking about one match, Roman versus The Rock. We've been hearing rumors about this match for longer than Roman's title reign. And now that The Rock has declared himself the final boss of the bloodline, it makes sense for him to side with Solo and hold Roman responsible for the loss at the previous WrestleMania. This is the kind of match that doesn't need titles to make it a spectacle. And it makes a lot more sense than Cody versus Rock, since there's no chance The Rock is walking out of WrestleMania as champion. Once Roman has speared his way through the bloodline, there's an unpredictable future ahead. We're real lucky to be living in a timeline where the end isn't so set in stone. But if there's one thing that hasn't changed, is that SmackDown will continue to be centered around Roman Reigns. The only difference is that now we're finally acknowledging him as a hero. So, what do you think? Are you excited for babyface Roman? Who do you want to see him face at WrestleMania? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this dive into Roman's future, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more wrestling analysis.